This is a fun recipe. Um, this is one that is a huge hit with everybody, but particularly with kids. We're going to do sweet and sour pork, just like you get in Chinese restaurants, only they're not fried, they're grilled. We're going to grill everything in the sweet sour pork, and it's going to be fantastic and less fat, less grease. So let me tell you how we're going to do it. We start with pork tenderloin. Now, it's really important you understand, a lot of people are confused about the difference between pork loin and pork tenderloin. Pork tenderloin comes from underneath the ribs, inside the rib cage, and it's the one muscle on the animal that works the least. Same thing on a beef tenderloin, which is where you get filet mignon. It's a very lazy muscle, so it's very tender. The loin muscle, on the other hand, is the back muscle. It runs along the spine, both sides. You've got two loin muscles. And on a hog, a loin muscle is about 4 inches in diameter, and it can run 3 feet long. It's a giant long tube, and it has very low fat. It's what most of your pork chops are cut from. So you know what your pork chops are. They're very low fat, they're very lean, so you've got to be really careful not to overcook them. 140 degrees on a loin. On a tenderloin, it's very tender, very juicy, and it's perfect for this dish. They're typically about 1 pound or 1.5 pounds each. We've got 2 of them right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to split them lengthwise into 4 wedges. And once we split them lengthwise, wedgewise, we're going to season them with salt, and we're going to grill them off and chop them up into bite-sized bits. Now, the first thing I want to do, though, is there's often this little bit of what's called silver skin, and silver skin can shrink when it gets hot, and it can get very tough and chewy. So we want to get silver skin off, and I've got the wrong knife for this. I want to use a filleting knife, which is... See, now, these knives are a really interesting subject. This is a chef's knife, classic 8-inch chef's knife, and it's got a curved blade so you can chop. But this is a fillet knife, and look at it. Wicked sharp, very thin. This is a thicker back here. Both of them are wicked sharp. But this is flexible, and it's really good for digging underneath things like silver skin. So I'm just going to, look at that. Just reach right under here and slice my way up and remove the silver skin. I cheated, by the way. I already cut this piece in half. There we go. So now we got rid of the silver skin. This is just fat, and I'm not worried about a little fat left on here. There's usually a knobby end to the tenderloin, either on the hog or beef. And that's okay too. So we get that silver skin off of here. We've got it trimmed up, now we got to salt it. And remember, we like to salt meat. You don't have to use a lot. I don't care if you're on a low salt diet. We're not using as much salt as you're going to get in fast food restaurants. We're using just a little bit of salt. 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt per pound of meat is the rule of thumb. And we're just going to do that, A, for seasoning, for flavor, but also because salt penetrates the meat and helps the protein hold on to moisture, and it really makes a difference. If you've ever watched cooking shows where they say, well, you really made a good dish, but you under-seasoned it. When they're talking about seasoning, they're not talking about pepper and garlic, they're talking about salt. This is seasoning it. So we now have a nice light seasoning of salt on here, and away we go. So I'm going to move this out of the way, and we're going to go on to the veggies. Sweet and sour pork. Can't be sweet and sour pork without a bell pepper. I like red. You can use yellow. You can use orange. There's all these wonderful sweet bell peppers out there. I prefer the red, yellow, and orange to the green for this dish, but you can use the green if you got it. And I just slice it in half, reach in here, pop out the seeds and stem, throw it in the compost bin, and then, of course, I've washed it beforehand. And then I'm going to rinse them. I always do it after I slice them open. Okay? And then I'm going to come back here and I'm going to cut them into bite-sized chunks. So I'm just going to slice. And then Line them up here. There we go. Some nice bite-sized chunks of sweet bell pepper. And now we've got a jalapeno pepper here. Just picked it from the garden today. Pop it open. Now, jalapenos are fun. They carry a kick. They're not the hottest pepper there is. A lot of people think the heat is in the seeds. There is heat in the seeds, but most of the heat is in the rib. It's called the placenta. And that's where all the heat is. So if you want to defang a jalapeno, you cut out the placenta or the ribs. But if you want to leave a little heat in there, then you just get the seeds out and leave all the rest in. And I'm just going to chop off the stem and the rest. Also, when you're scraping a cutting board, always use the back of the knife. Never use the blade. Use the back of the knife into the compost bin. I don't like seeds and things. And I'm going to go rinse this off in the sink, because you don't know what's inside. Sometimes there's little... So I'm just rinsing it off. We don't have to worry about pesticides or anything, because we grew these here ourselves. Now, these guys can be hot. So we're not going to cut them into bite size, otherwise we could hurt somebody. So I'm just going to leave them in halves, and we're going to grill them in halves, and we'll chop them up after we grill them. Okay? And then comes the onion. So you almost always start when you're working with an onion on the flower end, and you cut the flower end off, or the stalk end off. And then, now if you're going to make onion rings, you slice here. You want to get the peel off. But I'm going to cut it into... How am I going to do it? I'm going to do them in halves. So, because I'm just going to grill these off, and then I'll chop them after they're grilled. So I'm just going to cut it in half. And now I'm going to peel the skin off. And we'll just grill this like that. There we go. And I'll go ahead and chop the root end off. There we go. Okay. We're going to do the pineapple. When I was a boy, I lived in Florida, and my dad was a USDA inspector for the fruit and vegetable plants for Tropicana. And he came home one day with about 50 of these pineapple tops. You can plant these and grow a pineapple from them. The roots will come out from here, a big stalk will come out, and the pineapple will be on the end of the stalk. So Dad went out back and dug up a piece of our backyard, which was almost all sand, and planted about 50 of these. And he planted them close together. And guess whose job it was to weed them? Well, you know what pineapple tops are like. Shredded my arms. Every week I'm out there weeding. I just hated it. And in my first act of total rebellion, after I'd done this for weeks, and they weren't growing very well, I went out there because one of my other jobs was the lawnmower. And I took the lawnmower and cut them all down. Oh, did I catch hell for that. My dad never beat me. What he'd do is he'd put boxing gloves on me and put boxing gloves on him. He'd let me stand on the bed and we'd have a boxing match. And then he'd, of course, whoop my butt. But at least I had a chance to defend myself. So, we got a pineapple root here. We'll chop the other end off. And you're going to just work your way down the outside. You're going to lose a little pineapple, but it's not the end of the world. And you can actually throw this in the sous vide bath and extract the pineapple juice and use the fresh pineapple juice as a meat tenderizer. Pineapple juice has an enzyme in it, fresh pineapple juice, not canned pineapple juice, has an enzyme in it that is a meat tenderizer. and you can actually spread it on steak, pork, or whatever, and it will tenderize, mostly just the exterior. Can't penetrate deep, but it works fine as a tenderizer. Okay, so we've cleaned up the exterior, and we're going to grill rings of this. I've got a gizmo that you can stick down in the center here, and it'll pull out the core, and because you know the core is really hard. But I'm going to leave it intact just to make sure that the pineapple doesn't fall apart on the grill, and we'll take it off later when we chop it. So I'm just going to cut some rings. Now another thing you can do is you can cut it in planks along the side of the core. Whoops. There we go. And you notice I didn't dig deep and get all the eyes off. A little bit of the eyes are not going to hurt anything. And now we've got a nice hunk of core, which I like to suck on. That is a good sweet pineapple. Now, ask Meathead what his favorite thing to cook on the grill is. Pineapple. There's nothing better under the face of the earth grilled than pineapple. Period. Steak, nope. Pork, nope. Pineapple. Absolutely adore it. Turns it into pure candy. Fantastic. You can just grill it as it is. But if you want, you can paint it with a little liqueur. Maybe a little Grand Marnier. A little amaretto. A lot of fun. A lot of fun. Pineapple on the grill. So, we're ready to grill. We're going to grill the pork, the pineapple, the peppers, and the onion. And now we've got some toasted cashews. We just threw them in a frying pan and browned them a little bit. They're going to garnish. We got some chives. I'm going to chop them up when we're done. We're going to throw them on the top for a garnish. And this is mumbo sauce. And mumbo sauce is a great story. If you've ever been to Washington, D.C., and you go to Chinatown, you can get a lot of Chinese restaurants serve Chinese food and fried chicken. Now, I don't know how this tradition started. And the sweet sour sauce is called mumbo sauce. And as near as we can tell, the sauce originated on the south side of Chicago at a barbecue restaurant where it was called mumbo sauce. And in the neighborhood where the restaurants were, Chinatown was right next door. And they employed a lot of Chinese people in the kitchens. So we think, I'm trying to play research scientist, historian here, but I think that as near as we can tell, that somebody from Chinatown went to D.C. and brought mumbo sauce with him. And it then proliferated. And it's a regional dish in D.C., just like the yellow mustard sauce is classic South Carolina barbecue sauce, just like key lime pie is classic in the Florida Keys. Mumbo sauce is Washington, D.C.'s unique barbecue and sweet sour sauce. What do they got in the movie business? A clapper? We're ready. Let's shoot. Okay. Today we're going to do sweet and sour pork, just like they do downtown in Chinatown, only better. So we've got a hot zone and a not hot zone, and I've got some pork loin that we trimmed up, you remember, and we're just going to throw them on here and cook them to about 140 degrees, 130 degrees interior temp. Get some char on them, some sear on them, make them look nice. And then we're going to take them off, chop them up into bite-sized bits. Then we're going to take some of these veggies and we're going to put them in a grill topper so they don't fall through. And we've got some sugar snap peas, and they're not the same as snow peas. Snow peas lay flat and there's not much of a pea inside. These have fully grown pea inside and they're really sweet. I much prefer them to snow peas. And we're just going to put them in the grill topper here because if we didn't, they'd go right through and commit suicide. And while we're at it, let's Let's toss some of the jalapenos in there and throw some onions on and get everything in there. Okay. So take a look at these things and see how they're doing. And I think you might be able to see that the pork is starting to change color. It's getting a little pale on the outside. And I wanted some grill marks underneath. But you see they're still stuck to the grate. That's okay. Now usually I'll oil the pork so it won't stick. But that's okay. It releases. What happens is the proteins shrink. Now when they first go on there, the water and the proteins, they bond with the metal. And then eventually the water boils off, the proteins shrink, and it lets go. So we'll wait until it lets go. Everybody else is moving along gently. We're going to do some shifting and jiggling, but we'll get it there. Now I know if you were watching the steak segment, I railed against grill marks, especially on a steak. I want it brown all over. But when you've got little skinny tiny pieces like this, or shrimp, some fish, you just can't get it brown all over. You can get a pork chop brown all over, you can get a steak brown all over, but you want brown. Brown is that Maillard reaction. It's brown is flavor. So we're going to get grill marks on the vegetables and on the onions and on the pineapple, because we just can't get it brown all over. The pineapple doesn't have much protein, and these little skinny strips of pork. Now you could do the whole tenderloin if you want, and there's nothing wrong with it, but I wanted more surface so that I can get more grill marks on it. Okay, let's take a look and see how things are doing. See? It's letting go. Oh, we got some nice golden color there. See, it's letting go. Oh, we got a little stuck there. Letting go. Well, these two are still stuck. We'll let them in place. Let's take a look at our onions. Got a little marking going on there. And they need some time. These guys are on the indirect side, so they're going to just slowly cook. No hurry on them. Okay. Okay, these guys are moving along. We're going to take them up to about 135. You know, okay, these are loose. Get some nice color on these. Okay, I'm just going to kind of scrunch them down together so I can get these pineapples. See, the charcoal is here and over. There's no charcoal over here, so that's indirect. I want the pineapple dark. I want the pineapple seared. So I'm going to squeeze them in over here. And these guys are still in the indirect zone. And I don't want these guys to get too hot. These are vegetables. I don't want to overcook them. I want them crunchy so they're in the indirect zone. Another good reason why you need two zones. 148. Okay, I'm a little over. Let's get them the heck out of there. Standing around yakking to you guys. Overcook my pork. We got some nice color to it, and we're going to chop these up. Okay, let's see how the rest of the stuff is doing. Let's get these onions over. Whoa, got a little burn on the outside. That's all right. We can carve that or peel that off. Get some color to this. Here we go. I absolutely adore grilled pineapple, and these are starting to cook. I'm seeing some color on them. I like vegetables with a little crunch. We'll get it over the direct heat just a little bit. Those won't take much longer, and we're just about ready to start putting this dish together. Pineapple are perfect. And what the heck, let's take this onion off of here now. Okay, we're ready to go prep it and serve it. Okay, so we're ready to go. What we're going to do is we're going to assemble the sweet sour pork, which means we want it bite size. So we've got our nice warm pork tenderloin here that we grilled up, and we're going to just chop it up in bite-sized pieces. And by the way, we haven't talked about cutting boards either. You want wood or plastic. You do not want a glass cutting board. Glass will just dull your knife. Wood or plastic, either one works very well. And the beauty of plastic is you can run it through the dishwasher, which pasteurizes it. And wood has some natural compounds, lignin and other things, which help prevent growth of bacteria. So wood works pretty good. It's pretty safe. And by the way, I keep using the word pasteurize. You may have heard that. You may think that pasteurize is a word for milk, but the term pasteurize is used for many things. It means basically we have killed enough bacteria that it's safe. Sterilized is different than pasteurized. Sterilized means we've killed all bacteria. None left, zero. It's really hard to sterilize. Almost nothing that we cook is sterile. But we can cook things so that they're pasteurized. They're safe. Okay, so we've got our pork all chopped up. Into a bowl. Let's take on our when you can, see my knuckles? Always safe to cook with your fingertips underneath. You don't want your fingertips sticking out when you're cutting. I slip sometimes. I don't have the world's best technique. I have been known to cut myself. Every chef cuts himself, burns himself. It's just a hazard of the trade. But you want to do it as infrequently as possible. Oh, what happens when you cook pineapple is you evaporate water, so you concentrate the sugar, and you caramelize the sugars. So you get these rich, complex flavors that are different than when they're raw. I'm going to leave a little bit of that burnt in there. That little char is kind of nice. Sometimes I take it off, but we're just going to leave it in there. Bust these into slivers. Come on. And the jalapenos. All right, now we're dealing with hot stuff, and so you don't want to hurt anybody. You just, unless you know everybody at the table and you know what their toleration or their tolerance of heat is. So I'll usually take hot peppers and cut them fairly small so that they don't provide too much of a burst of heat. So I'm keeping these on the smaller side. And I'm going to just put the sugar snap peas and the peppers, which we've already chopped, in there whole. Voila. And okay, now I'm going to show everybody how old I am. There's this wonderful scene in Judy Garland movie, Easter Parade, where she and her boyfriend go to dinner in a fancy restaurant, and he makes a Caesar salad. And he does a tableside presentation that's for the books. You got to Google this. Caesar salad, Judy Garland. And it's chop, chop, mix, mix. Chop, chop, mix, mix. Chop, chop. And he just, each of the ingredients, just what I did here. But he does it like a dance in a ballet. And the final verse is chop, chop, mix, mix, chop, chop, mix, mix, and it's wonderful stuff. I'm getting to be old. Put you guys to sleep, I know. That's our sweet and sour pork, and we're ready to plate. So we're going to take a bed of rice and spill it all over the place. There we go. And then we're going to top it with our sweet and sour pork. Got all our vegetables and flavors, all that wonderful stuff. It's kind of pretty, isn't it? Now, we have the mumbo sauce, which is our sweet and sour sauce. You can buy sweet and sour sauce in the store. You can make your own recipe. This is the mumbo sauce. Really works nice with this. Use as much or as little as you want. Oh, that's good. And then we garnish it with some roasted cashews. And chop up some fresh chives. And I'm going to chop with a knife, but a lot of the times I just use the scissors. Just snip them off with the scissors. Get those fingertips out of the way. Okay, so we got some fresh chives. And that is one very pretty dish, don't you think?